Although caffeine is scientifically proven to provide an energy and emotional boost, caffeine has no nutritional value and can often raise one's heartbeat and blood pressure to unsafe levels. Caffeine should only continue to be used under strict moderation.
Hello and welcome to Questions with Kaelee, or better known as QWK. Here on today's episode of QWK, we will be taking live phone calls and text messages to answer your very important questions concerning caffeine. As you all may know, caffeine is a very, and I mean very, controversial subject. You are exposed to so many pros and cons and pros that you may become flustered, concerned, and downright panicked. Thus, as a concerned American, I have decided to make it my civic duty, my obligation, my responsibility to help those less intelligent citizens of this fine country make the wisest choices possible. And it looks like we have our first caller. Hello, you are on the air with Kaelee from QWK. What is your question?
So, like everyone says, caffeine is addictive. Do you know if it's actually?
Well, caffeine is a stimulant to the central nervous system, and regular use of caffeine does cause mild physical dependence. But caffeine does not threaten your physical, social, or economic health the way that addictive drugs do. Although the average person spends over $15 a week on coffee alone, according to various doctors on WebMD, caffeine is not an addictive substance. Actually, I don't even need to answer that. I know what you're thinking. If caffeine isn't an addictive substance, then why do so many people go through caffeine withdrawals? If you stop taking caffeine abruptly, you may have some symptoms for a day or more, especially if you consume 2 or more cups of coffee a day. No doubt that caffeine withdrawal can make you bad for a few days, but caffeine does not cause the severity of withdrawal or harmful drug-seeking behaviors as street drugs or alcohol. For this reason, most experts do not consider caffeine dependence a serious addiction. I hope I'm beginning to clear the air for some of the viewers. Hey, looks like we have our first text question of the day. What kind of withdrawals are we talking about here? Symptoms include headache, fatigue, anxiety, irritability, depressed mood, and difficulty concentrating. But don't worry. Since caffeine isn't like those other addictive drugs, these symptoms will only last a few days at most. You're on the air with Kaelee from QWK. What is your question? My mom never lets me have caffeine before I go to bed. She says I won't sleep. I don't understand. Of course! Your body quickly absorbs caffeine, but it also gets rid of it quickly. Processed mainly through the liver, caffeine has a relatively short half-life. This means it takes about 5 to 7 hours on average to eliminate half of it from your body. So, drinking it right before bed will affect how fast you are able to fall asleep. After 8 to 10 hours, 75% of the caffeine is gone. For most people, a cup of coffee or 2 in the morning won't interfere with sleep at night. Consuming caffeine later in the day, however, can interfere with sleep. If you are like most people, your sleep will not be affected if you do not consume caffeine at least 6 hours before going to bed. Your sensitivity may vary though, depending on your metabolism and the amount of caffeine you regularly consume. People who are more sensitive may not only experience insomnia, but will also have side effects of nervousness and gastrointestinal upset. As you can see, caffeine's pros and cons go together. Most can be pros unless taken too far, then they may turn into cons. Does caffeine cause heart disease, cancer? A slight, temporary rise in heart rate and blood pressure is common among those who are sensitive to caffeine, but several large studies do not link caffeine to a higher cholesterol, irregular heartbeats, or an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. If you already have high blood pressure or heart problems, though, have a discussion with your doctor about your caffeine intake. You may be more sensitive to its effects. Also, more research is needed to tell whether caffeine increases the risk for stroke in people with high blood pressure. People who drink 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day had the lowest risk of cardiovascular disease, according to a 2013 meta-analysis by Harvard University. Reviews of 13 studies involving 20,000 people revealed no relationship between cancer and caffeine. This is QWK. What is your question? Does caffeine at all affect pregnancy? Many studies show no links between low amounts of caffeine, a cup of coffee per day, and the following: trouble conceiving, miscarriage, birth defects, premature birth, and low birth rate. At the same time, for pregnant women or those attempting pregnancy, March Dime suggests fewer than 200 milligrams of caffeine per day. That's largely because, in limited studies, women consuming higher amounts of caffeine had an increased risk for miscarriage. So, if you're pregnant, you'll have to watch how much you drink. Once a woman is carrying, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists advises no more than 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day. The National Institutes of Health recommends consuming no more than 300 milligrams a day during pregnancy, about 3 to 4 cups of regular coffee. The bottom line is, if the intake for a pregnant woman is less than 300 milligrams of caffeine a day, there should be no harm inflicted upon the baby, says Linda Burke Galloway, MD. But too much caffeine may cause irregular fetal heartbeat, which sometimes occurs in women who eat excessive amounts of chocolate. But don't worry if you're trying to conceive. You won't have to give up the lattes. Research suggests that caffeine has a little, if any, effect on the time it takes to conceive, and it's not a risk factor for infertility.
This is QWK. What is your question?
Does caffeine have any health benefits at all?
Actually,
Caffeine has few proven health benefits, but the list of caffeine's potential benefits is interesting. Any regular coffee drinker may tell you that caffeine improves alertness, concentration, energy, clear-headedness, and the feelings of sociability. You might even be the type who needs that first cup of joe each morning before you say a single word. Scientific studies support these objective findings. Other possible benefits include helping certain types of headache pain. Some people's asthma also appears to benefit from caffeine. Limited evidence suggests that caffeine may also reduce the risk of the following: Parkinson's disease, liver disease, colorectal cancer, type 2 diabetes, and dementia. Despite its potential benefits, don't forget that high levels of caffeine may have an adverse effect.
so now that I've answered all the questions, let's review.
Let's talk about the pros and cons of caffeine. The pros include reduced chances of heart disease, Parkinson's, liver disease, colorectal cancer, type 2 diabetes, and dementia. Instant energy boost. Speeds up weight loss, a laxative, and pain reliever. The cons include minor addictiveness, minor withdrawals, affects sleep, possible pregnancy complications, slight bone loss, increase in blood pressure.
Although caffeine is scientifically proven to provide an energy and emotional boost, caffeine has no nutritional value and can raise one's heartbeat and blood pressure to unsafe levels. Caffeine should only continue to be used under strict moderation.